Hey guys, tonight we step together into a version of Earth that barely feels real anymore. You stand on ground that crunches underfoot, not with gravel, but with frost so old it squeaks softly when you move. The air is sharp, clean, almost metallic, and every breath feels like it has edges. In the distance, ice stretches outward in slow, white waves, and the wind slides across it like a whisper that never quite finishes a sentence. This is not the cozy winter, you know. This is winter turned up so high that the planet itself seems to be holding its breath. And just so we're clear, you probably won't survive this knot without a lot of fur, fire, and stubborn determination. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, feel free to drop a comment with where you're re-listening from and what time it is there right now. Somewhere, it's midnight. Somewhere else, the sun is rising. Right here, the world is frozen in between. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin walking, slowly, because rushing in this cold would be a mistake. This is the Ice Age, or more accurately, one of several ice ages. But the one you're standing in is the most famous, the last great glacial period. It's roughly 20,000 years ago, give or take a few millennia, which is close enough when your calendar is carved into bone instead of synced to your phone. Vast ice sheets blanket huge portions of the northern hemisphere. North America is buried under ice, thick enough to swallow skyscrapers that don't exist yet. Europe is locked in a white grip, and even places closer to the equator feel cooler, drier, harsher. You notice how quiet everything feels. Snow absorbs sound, and ice doesn't echo the way forests do. There are no engines, no distant traffic, no background buzz of modern life, just wind, your breath, and the faint, unsettling creak of glaciers far away. Those glaciers aren't static, by the way. That's a mainstream historical fact worth letting sink in. Ice Age glaciers move, slowly but relentlessly, flowing like frozen rivers. They grind mountains down, carve valleys, and drag enormous rocks for miles, leaving them behind like forgotten furniture when the ice finally retreats. As you stand there, you realize the planet itself looks different. Sea levels are dramatically lower by more than 100 meters compared to today. That means coastlines are pushed far outward, exposing land that, in your world, lies drowned beneath oceans. Britain is connected to mainland Europe by a vast plain. Asia and North America are joined by a cold, windy land bridge called Bering. You could, in theory, walk from Siberia to Alaska without getting your feet wet, though you'd probably complain the whole way. No coffee stops, no heated restrooms, just wind and regret. Here's a quirky tidbit to keep your mind gently amused as you relax. During parts of the Ice Age, some regions closer to the equator weren't icy at all. Instead, they were dusty, dry, and filled with fine particles blown from far-off glaciers. In fact, what helps fertilize parts of the Amazon rainforest today may trace back to Ice Age dust carried across the Atlantic. Yes, frozen wastelands indirectly feeding future jungles. Earth has a strange sense of humor, and it enjoys long setups. You trudge forward, wrapped in imagined furs, and you start to feel how hostile this world is to soft, unprepared creatures. Summers are short and cool. Winters are long, dark, and unforgiving. Storms sweep across open plains with nothing to stop them. Yet life exists here. That alone tells you something important. The Ice Age is not a dead world. It's a stressed world. A world under pressure. And pressure, as you may remember from every motivational quote ever, creates adaptation. Sometimes it also creates very grumpy animals. You pause and look across the frozen landscape, trying to picture what's missing. Forests are sparse. Trees struggle in the cold, especially near the ice sheets. Instead, you see tundra-low grasses, mosses, and hardy shrubs clinging to the soil. This kind of environment supports large grazing animals, which in turn support large predators. The Ice Age is famous for its megafauna, but you'll meet them properly later. For now, you just feel the scale of emptiness, the openness that makes you feel both free and very exposed, like standing in the middle of a frozen parking lot with no car in sight. Historians still argue whether the Ice Age should be thought of as a single catastrophic era or as a rhythmic cycle in Earth's long climate dance. Some scholars emphasize dramatic moments, maximum ice coverage, sudden temperature drops, while others stress the slow, pulsing nature of glacial advance and retreat. As you stand here, toes numb, it's hard to imagine anything but permanence. Ice feels eternal when you're inside it. But the planet, it turns out, is always in motion, even when it looks frozen solid. You notice the sky. It feels bigger somehow. Without modern pollution, the air is clearer, and light behaves differently. Sunrises and sunsets stretch longer, bleeding color across snow and ice. At night, stars feel closer, sharper, as if you could reach up and scrape frost off them. There's a joke to be made here about no light pollution and great stargazing, but you're also very aware that lying down to admire the view might end poorly. Sleep is dangerous in this cold. That's your second light joke of the night. 5-star view, 0-star survival rating. As you continue, a strange calm settles over you. This world doesn't rush. Glaciers don't hurry. Climate shifts happen over thousands of years. Compared to that, your entire modern life would barely register as a blink. There's something oddly comforting about that scale. Your worries feel small out here, frozen and fragile, like breath turning to crystals in the air. You adjust your pace, feeling the rhythm of walking in heavy cold. Step, crunch, breathe. Step, crunch, breathe. This is Earth stripped down to fundamentals: rock, ice, sky, and time. No notifications, no deadlines, just survival and awareness. And as you move deeper into this frozen age, you begin to understand that the Ice Age isn't just about cold. It's about patience, about endurance, about a planet testing everything that lives on it, slowly, relentlessly, without malice. And somewhere beneath the ice, beneath your careful steps, the future is waiting, thawing, reshaping, preparing to surprise you. But for now, you keep walking, shoulders hunched against the wind, letting the cold world settle around you like a heavy, quiet blanket. You keep moving forward, because standing still in this cold invites trouble, and because the earth beneath you is quietly telling a story that takes patience to hear. As you walk, you begin to sense that this frozen world didn't just happen overnight. The Ice Age wasn't some dramatic switch flipped by an annoyed planet. It was more like a slow dimming of the lights, so gradual that generations lived and died without ever realizing the room was getting colder. You tilt your head toward the pale sky, and even though you can't see it, you're standing inside a cosmic clockwork. One mainstream historical fact slips into your thoughts. Earth's ice ages are strongly linked to subtle changes in its orbit and tilt, known as Milankovitch cycles. Over tens of thousands of years, the planet wobbles slightly, leans a little more or a little less, and traces a slightly different path around the sun. These tiny shifts alter how sunlight is distributed across the globe, not how bright the sun is, just where and when its warmth lands. Apparently, that's enough to let ice start winning arguments. You imagine summers growing just a bit cooler, year after year. Snow that once melted now lingers. That lingering snow reflects sunlight back into space, keeping temperatures lower, allowing even more snow to survive the next summer. It's a feedback loop, so calm and polite, it feels almost sleepy, yet its consequences are enormous. Ice sheets slowly thicken, glaciers begin their patient crawl, and oceans quietly surrender water to the landlocked cold. No explosions, no villains. Just physics, doing what physics does best, being very stubborn. The wind brushes past you, carrying fine ice crystals that sting your cheeks. You realize this cold isn't evenly spread. Some places freeze hard, others remain surprisingly mild. Even during the height of the Ice Age, parts of the planet never see glaciers at all. Deserts persist. Forests hang on in sheltered pockets. This unevenness matters. It creates refuges, places where plants and animals can survive, while the rest of the world toughens up. Without these refuges, life might have lost the game entirely, and you wouldn't be here listening to this while trying to fall asleep. Here's a quirky tidbit to keep your brain gently occupied. Volcanic eruptions may have helped tip the climate scales at certain points. Ash and aerosols blasted into the atmosphere can block sunlight temporarily, cooling the planet just enough to give expanding ice a head start. It's like Earth occasionally sneezed, and glaciers took advantage. Not all scientists agree on how big a role volcanoes played, but the idea that a few bad eruptions could help push the world toward deep freeze is oddly humbling and a little funny if you imagine glaciers saying thanks for that. As you move across the frozen ground, you notice layers beneath your boots: snow over ice, ice over soil, soil over rock. These layers are archives. Much later, humans will drill into ice cores and read the Ice Age like a diary, analyzing trapped air bubbles to learn about ancient atmospheres. They'll measure carbon dioxide levels and realize something important. During Ice Age peaks, CO is significantly lower than today. That's another mainstream fact, and it hints at how tightly climate and atmospheric chemistry dance together, occasionally stepping on each other's toes. Historians still argue whether orbital changes alone are enough to explain the full intensity of ice ages, or whether greenhouse gases, ocean currents, and biological feedbacks play equally starring roles. Some say the orbits light the fuse, while co-packs the explosives. Others argue the oceans deserve more creditor blame for redistributing heat and locking carbon away in cold depths. As you walk, you don't need to solve the debate. You just feel the outcome under your feet. A world chilled by cooperation between sky, sea, and stone. You pause near a low ridge, looking out over a frozen plain that stretches until it blurs into white haze. Wind carves delicate patterns into the snow, like ripples on a frozen ocean. It's beautiful in the way only dangerous things are. You think, briefly, how absurd it is that a tilt of a few degrees and a slightly squashed orbit can determine whether this place is grassy meadow or lethal tundra. Third light joke. Imagine rearranging your living room furniture and accidentally creating a new ice age. Earth takes redecorating very seriously. Time feels different here. Seasons still exist, but they move slowly, heavily. Summer is more of a suggestion than a promise. Winter dominates, lingering like an unwanted guest who refuses to read social cues. Plants adjust by growing low to the ground. Animals migrate or grow thicker coats. Everything seems to whisper the same lesson: adapt or disappear, preferably quietly. As you resume walking, the cold no longer feels shocking. It's steady now, almost companionable. You beginning to understand that the Ice Age is less about sudden catastrophe and more about endurance over absurd lengths of time. Generation after generation lives under slightly colder skies, never knowing anything else. To them, this is just Earth, normal Earth, the only Earth that matters. Above you, clouds drift lazily, unaware of the massive role their long-term patterns play in shaping fate. Below you, ice presses downward, reshaping continents, grain by grain. And you, moving through it all, feel small, but strangely calm. The planet doesn't hurry, it doesn't panic. It just follows rules written into its motion, letting cold settle in like a long, slow breath. You walk on, deeper into that breath, deeper into the frozen rhythm that defines this age-aware, now that the Ice Age is not an accident, but a consequence. A quiet, patient consequence of a planet in motion, endlessly circling a star that shines the same while everything else slowly, softly changes. You keep walking, and at some point, the ground beneath you stops feeling like solid land and starts feeling like something newly revealed, as if the planet has quietly pulled back a curtain. This is one of the strangest sensations of the Ice Age. You are standing on places that in your own time would be drowned under hundreds of feet of water. The ocean has retreated, not out of fear, but because so much of its water is locked away in ice. Sea levels during the peak of the last ice age are more than 100 meters lower than what you reused to. And that single fact redraws the entire map in your mind. You walk toward what feels like a coast, but there is no crashing surf, no salty spray. Instead, there's a vast, flat expanse, stretching outward, muddy in places, frozen hard in others. This is continental shelf-turned walking path. The land smells faintly mineral, sharp and clean, like exposed bone. You realize that the familiar shapes of continents are illusions created by water. Take the water away, and Earth reveals hidden connections, like old scars, finally uncovered. One mainstream historical fact settles into your thoughts as you move. Lowered sea levels create land bridges, temporary corridors that connect worlds. The most famous is Beringia, a broad, cold plain linking Asia and North America. It's not a narrow bridge, but a wide, wind-swept region, rich in grasses and animals. You could walk for days across it, assuming you don't mind the cold and the complete lack of coffee. This exposed land allows plants, animals, and eventually humans to migrate between continents, reshaping the genetic and cultural future of the planet. You imagine herds moving across these open spaces, mammoths, bison, horses following seasonal patterns that ignore your modern borders. Predators follow prey. Humans follow both. The Ice Age world feels strangely open, less divided by water, more continuous. Europe blends into Asia. Britain is not an island, but a peninsula attached to a vast plain called Doggerland. It's fertile, alive, and busy with animals, though one day it will vanish beneath rising seas, leaving only fishing nets to occasionally drag up its memory. Here, as a quirky tidbit to tuck into your half-awake brain, Doggerland wasn't just empty wilderness. Archaeological finds suggest it supported human life, with rivers, hills, and forests. Today, its remains lie under the North Sea, occasionally coughing up stone tools and bones when trawlers disturb the seabed. Imagine losing an entire country and only realizing it existed because fishermen keep snagging its past. Earth, once again, hides its best plot twists underwater. As you cross this exposed terrain, you notice how different the climate feels even away from the ice sheets. With oceans pulled back, the air is drier, less water evaporates, fewer clouds form, and rainfall drops in many regions. Dust becomes a major character in this story. Fine sediments, ground up by glaciers, are picked up by winds and carried thousands of kilometers. They settle into thick layers, called loess, creating fertile soils in places that will one day support massive agricultural civilizations. Right now, though, they just make the horizon hazy and your imagined throat a little scratchy. Historians still argue whether these lowered sea levels were more of an opportunity or a bottleneck for migrating species. Some researchers suggest the open land made movement easier, encouraging expansion and innovation. Others argue that harsh conditions on these exposed plains limited travel to narrow windows of time, turning migration into a risky gamble rather than an open invitation. As you walk, you can feel both arguments under your feet. The land is open, yes, but it is also unforgiving. You stop for a moment and look back, trying to picture where the ocean would be in your own era, far, far behind you. It's a strange feeling, standing on a place that feels solid now, but is destined to drown later. Third, light joke for this section. Beachfront property that absolutely does not hold its value long term. The Ice Age giveth, and the melting Ice Age taketh away. The absence of water changes sound, too. There's less of that distant, rhythmic ocean noise. Instead, the wind dominates, sweeping across open plains without resistance. It hums, whistles, and sometimes howls low enough to feel in your chest. You realize how much modern coastlines rely on water to moderate temperature. Without it, days can feel surprisingly bright under clear skies, but nights drop into brutal cold, catching the unprepared off guard. You continue walking, following a shallow depression that might once have been a river channel. During warmer seasons, meltwater snakes across these lands, carving paths that guide animals and people alike. These rivers are lifelines, offering fresh water and movement corridors. You imagine following one inland, away from the exposed coast, toward places where shelter might be found. Migration here isn't random. It's guided by subtle cues de rain, water, vegetation that whisper directions if you know how to listen. Above you, birds pass overhead, following routes that will one day vanish beneath waves. Below you, the ground holds the compressed history of a temporary world. You feel a quiet awe, realizing how much of Earth's story happens in places that don't last. Land appears. Life adapts. Land disappears. Memory remains, scattered in sediments and bones. As you walk onward, the idea settles in gently. During the Ice Age, Earth is bigger. Not in mass, not in volume, but in usable space. More land means more paths, more chances, more collisions between species and ideas. It's a fleeting expansion, but while it lasts, it reshapes everything. You move deeper into that expanded world, knowing the water is waiting patiently to return, and that nothing revealed by ice stays uncovered forever. You feel it before you fully see it, the pressure in the air, the deep, low sense that something enormous is nearby. Ahead of you, the land subtly tilts upward, and the horizon becomes a wall of white and blue. This is not just snow, this is a glacier, and it dominates the landscape with the quiet confidence of something that knows it has all the time in the world. You step closer, carefully, because even standing near it feels like approaching a sleeping animal that could wake up cranky. One mainstream historical fact settles into your thoughts as you watch the Ice Age glaciers can be more than a kilometer thick and stretch for thousands of kilometers. They aren't frozen statues. They flow, very slowly. Yes, but they flow all the same, driven by gravity and their own immense weight. The ice beneath you creaks, pops, and groans as internal layers shift. It's not dramatic, just persistent, like the planet clearing its throat for 10,000 years. You walk along the glacier's edge, noticing how it reshapes everything it touches. Rocks embedded in the ice scrape against the ground, polishing bedrock smooth or carving deep grooves that will later confuse geology students. Valleys are widened and deepened into the classic U-shapes that glaciers love to leave behind. Hills are shaved down. Entire landscapes are remodeled without permission. This is not destruction in a fiery sense, it's slow editing. The glacier is an obsessive editor, trimming, smoothing, and rearranging until the land matches its vision. Here's a quirky tidbit to let your mind wander. Glaciers sometimes transport massive boulders, some the size of houses hundreds of kilometers from where they formed. These are called erratics because future humans will look at them sitting in strange places and think that rock has absolutely no business being here. For a long time, people invent wild explanations involving floods, giants, or divine tantrums before finally accepting that ice, given enough time, can apparently redecorate entire continents. As you walk, meltwater trickles along the glacier's edge, even in this cold. During warmer seasons, these streams grow louder, carving channels beneath the ice and occasionally causing sudden collapses. Glacial lakes form, trapped behind ice dams, calm and glassy on the surface, but hiding immense pressure beneath. When those dams fail, the resulting floods called cyclones, because Icelandic words don't believe in being short, can reshape valleys in days. That's a mainstream fact too. Some of the largest floods in Earth's history come from melting ice, not rain. Historians still argue whether these catastrophic meltwater floods were rare exceptions or regular features of Ice Age landscapes. Some evidence suggests repeated outbursts scoured regions, like the Pacific Northwest, creating vast channels and strange ripple patterns in solid rock. Others caution against overusing flood explanations when slow erosion could also do the job. As you stand here, listening to water drip and ice groan, It's easy to imagine both slow patience, punctuated by moments of sudden, unstoppable release. You run a gloved hand along the ice. It's not pure white. Layers of blue, gray, and even brown streak through it, marking years, centuries, millennia of snowfall, compressed into crystal. Trapped air bubbles whisper of ancient atmospheres. Tiny flecks of dust hint at distant deserts and storms long gone. The glacier is a memory machine, recording everything that falls on it and carrying that record forward, inch by inch. The air near the ice feels colder, heavier. Wind sliding off the glacier sinks and spreads across the land, creating katabatic winds that bite harder than you expect. You lean into it, shoulders hunched, thinking this is probably why nobody ever invented beachfront glacier resorts. That's your third light joke for the section, and honestly, it earned itself. You follow the glacier's edge until it curves away, revealing a plain of rubble and fine sediment. This is a moraine, built from everything the glacier couldn't carry any farther. It's messy, uneven, and strangely beautiful in its chaos. One day, plants will colonize it. Much later, humans will farm it, build on it, and complain about the rocks in their fields, never suspecting those stones took a very long, very cold journey to get there. As you move on, you start to feel how glaciers define the Ice Age, not just visually, but psychologically. They block movement, redirect rivers, and force life to adapt around them. They create barriers and corridors at the same time. Animals learn their edges. Humans learn their dangers. Everyone learns patience. Nothing about a glacier invites haste. You glance back one last time at the towering ice wall. It doesn't acknowledge you. It doesn't need to. It will still be here long after your imagined footprints are buried by snow. Yet, despite its power, it is not permanent. Deep down, you know this. The same slow processes that built it can undo it. Warmth will return. Ice will retreat. The editor will eventually put down its pen. For now, though, the glacier remains, shaping the world with quiet determination. You turn away and continue walking, carrying with you the understanding that in the Ice Age, the land itself is alive, not in a breathing sense, but in motion, always in motion, even when everything looks frozen solid. You move away from the glacier's edge, and almost immediately the world feels different. The ice no longer dominates your vision, but its influence lingers everywhere, like a cold memory that won't quite let go. Here, life has learned to exist in the margins between too cold and just survivable. You begin to notice it in small details. First, tufts of grass poking through frozen soil, lichens clinging to rock, stubborn little plants hugging the ground as if trying not to be noticed. One mainstream historical fact settles gently into your thoughts as you walk. During the Ice Age, much of the northern hemisphere is covered not in forests, but in tundra and steppe-vast, open landscapes dominated by grasses and low shrubs. Trees struggle here. Their roots can't easily penetrate frozen ground, and strong winds punish anything that grows too tall. So plants adapt by staying short, growing fast during brief summers, and conserving energy like professional introverts. You crouch down, brushing snow aside to see the vegetation more clearly. These plants aren't weak, they're specialists. Some can photosynthesize at lower temperatures. Others reproduce quickly the moment conditions allow. Many have deep, fibrous roots that grip the soil tightly, preventing erosion when meltwater rushes through. This green carpet, thin as it looks, supports entire ecosystems. Without it, the great Ice Age animals you've heard about wouldn't stand a chance. As you straighten up and continue walking, you notice movement in the distant small, darting shapes. Arctic foxes, maybe, or hares already turning white for camouflage. One of the clever tricks of Ice Age life is color. Animals grow lighter coats in winter, darker in summer, blending into snow or soil as needed. It's nature's version of seasonal wardrobe changes, except with higher stakes and no fashion magazines judging the results. Here, a quirky tidbit to keep your half-dreaming mind entertained. Some Ice Age insects may have survived by essentially freezing solid, Certain beetles and flies can produce natural antifreeze chemicals that prevent ice crystals from shredding their cells. They become popsicles with a pulse, thawing out when temperatures rise. If that doesn't redefine just sleep it off, nothing will. That's light joke number 1. And yes, you're allowed a slow, sleepy smile. Larger animals show different strategies. You imagine herds grazing across the steppe, their bodies built for efficiency. Thick fur traps, heat, fat layers store energy for lean times. Compact ears and tails reduce heat loss. Even body size matters. Many Ice Age animals are larger than their modern relatives, a pattern known as Bergmann's rule. Bigger bodies lose heat more slowly. It's basic physics turned into biology, and it works remarkably well. Historians still argue whether these cold-adapted ecosystems were more productive than they appear. Some scholars see the Ice Age steppe as a harsh, marginal environment, barely supporting life. Others argue it was a surprisingly rich biome, capable of sustaining enormous populations of grazing animals, thanks to nutrient-rich soils and efficient plant growth during short summers. As you look around, it's easy to imagine both views. The land looks sparse, yet everything that lives here seems well-fed, well-adapted, and quietly thriving. You walk through a shallow dip where snow has melted and refrozen, forming a slick crust. Underneath, the soil is dark and crumbly. This is loess-fine, wind-blown sediment deposited over thousands of years. It's incredibly fertile, though that fact won't matter until much later, when humans decide to farm instead of wander. For now, it feeds grasses that feed animals that feed predators. Simple, elegant, and brutally honest. A sudden rustle catches your attention. Somewhere nearby, something larger is moving. You don't see it, but you feel the tension ripple through the landscape. Life here is alert. Everything listens, everything watches. Predators are never far, and prey animals survive by assuming they are always being observed. Light joke number 2. Paranoia, but make it evolutionary. You imagine the seasonal rhythms that govern this place. In summer, the sun lingers long in the sky, bathing the land in extended daylight. Plants grow fast. Animals gorge themselves, building fat reserves. In winter, darkness stretches on. Food becomes scarce, and survival depends on preparation. There's no room for procrastination here. Miss your chance to eat, and you don't get a second reminder. As you move onward, you notice tracks pressed into snow and mud, hoofprints, paw marks, winding trails of smaller creatures. Each tells a story of movement and decision. Follow food, avoid danger, conserve energy. These rules apply to everything, from insects to massive herbivores. They even apply to you, walking carefully, instinctively, choosing firm ground over slippery ice, despite knowing this is all a story meant to lull you toward sleep. Another mainstream fact drifts in. Many Ice Age species develop slower reproductive rates but longer lifespans. In harsh environments, producing fewer, well-supported offspring often works better than having many and hoping some survive. It's a strategy built on patience, and patience seems to be the Ice Age's defining virtue. You smile faintly at the thought that modern humans, with their notifications and deadlines, would struggle, here not just physically, but mentally. Everything moves slower. Decisions matter more. There's no rushing winter. That's light joke number 3. And honestly, the Ice Age would not care how late you're running. As you walk, the realization settles in gently. Life doesn't just endure. The Ice Age adapts to it so thoroughly that this cold world becomes normal. There is no longing for warmth, no memory of greener days. For the creatures born here, this is home. Ice, wind, and open sky are not enemies. They are conditions. You keep moving through this quiet, resilient landscape, feeling the subtle pulse of life beneath the cold. It's not loud. It doesn't show off. It simply persists, adjusting itself to every challenge the planet sets in its path. And as the land stretches out ahead of you, you sense that even greater adaptations are waiting. Creatures, larger, cleverer, and more dangerous than anything you've seen so far. You feel them before you see them. The low vibration in the ground, the sense that the air ahead is occupied by something heavy and alive. The steppe opens up, and there they are, giants moving slowly through the cold, their silhouettes rising and falling against the pale horizon. This is the age of megafauna, when animals are built not just to survive the ice age, but to dominate it. You instinctively slow your pace, because being noticed by something this large would be a very bad networking opportunity. One mainstream historical fact anchors itself in your thoughts. During the last ice age, the planet supports an extraordinary diversity of large mammals, woolly mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, steppe bison, cave bears, and saber-toothed cats among them. Many of these animals are significantly larger than their modern relatives, adapted for cold climates, with thick fur, fat layers, and efficient metabolisms. Standing here, you understand why size matters. Bigger bodies mean more stored heat and energy, and in this world, energy is everything. You watch a group of woolly mammoths move together, their long, curved tusks sweeping snow aside to reach buried grasses. Their fur hangs in uneven layers, catching frost-like decoration. Calves stay close to adults, sheltered by bulk and experience. The herd moves with calm confidence, as if they know few things on this landscape can challenge them. They're wrong, of course, but only a little. Here's a quirky tidbit to keep your mind gently amused. Mammoth tusks aren't just weapons or digging tools. Growth rings inside them record seasonal changes, diet, and even stress, much like tree rings. By reading these patterns, future scientists will reconstruct individual mammoths' life stories, periods of abundance, hardship, migration, and injury. Imagine your entire emotional history stored in your teeth. Dentistry would be much more personal. Off to one side, you sense movement in the shadows, predators, keeping a respectful distance. Saber-toothed cats, despite their dramatic fangs, are ambush hunters, not reckless chargers. Their long canines are fragile in a way that feels unfair, given how intimidating they look. A broken tooth could mean starvation, so they wait, they plan. They strike only when the odds favor them heavily. Patience, again. The Ice Age really leans into that theme. Historians still argue whether these predators hunted alone or cooperatively. Some evidence suggests social behavior, perhaps even pack-like strategies in certain species, while other findings point toward solitary ambush hunters. Watching the shadows shift, you can believe either version. In a world where mistakes are fatal, flexibility is just as valuable as strength. You move carefully, keeping distance, because you are very much not built for this ecosystem. Nearby, a giant ground sloth lumbers past, taller than you, moving with deceptive calm. It can rear up on hind legs and defend itself with massive claws, though it mostly prefers plants and minding its own business. Light joke number 1. Aggressively peaceful energy, Ice Age edition. Birds wheel overhead, large, powerful scavengers riding cold air currents. Where there are giants, there are leftovers, and where there are leftovers, there are opportunists. Nothing is wasted here. Even death feeds life efficiently and without ceremony. You feel a strange respect for that honesty. No abstractions, no denial, just cycles. Another mainstream fact drifts into focus. Many of these megafauna species will not survive beyond the end of the Ice Age. Their eventual extinction reshapes ecosystems worldwide. The reasons are still debated: climate change, human hunting, or some combination of both. Standing among them now, alive and dominant, it's difficult to imagine this landscape without their heavy footsteps. You watch a saber-toothed cat crouch low, muscles coiled. It doesn't attack. The mammoths are too many, too alert. The moment passes. The predator melts back into the cold grass, conserving energy for another chance. Light joke number 2. Even apex predators know when to scroll past instead of engaging. As you move on, you notice how these giants shape the land itself. Grazing animals prevent trees from taking over, maintaining open steppe. They're trampling compact soil in some places and loosens it in others. Dung fertilizes the ground, spreading seeds. Yes, that's your third light joke reference. Callback, potential remember. This ecosystem runs partly on poop, glorious, ancient poop. You realize that these animals aren't just inhabitants of the Ice Age, they are engineers of it. Remove them, and the landscape changes. Vegetation shifts, fire patterns change. Even climate feedbacks may be affected. Some scientists argue that the disappearance of megafauna contributes to increased forest growth and altered carbon cycles. Others caution that the picture is more complicated. Historians still argue whether megafaunal extinction significantly influenced post-ice age climate or merely accompanied it. You slow your breathing, letting the rhythm of the herd guide your calm. There is something deeply soothing about watching such massive creatures move without urgency. They don't rush, they don't multitask, they exist fully in each step. It's almost meditative if you ignore the fact that they could accidentally step on you and end the meditation permanently. As you leave them behind, the ground's vibration fades and the step grows quieter, but the sense of scale stays with you. The Ice Age is not subtle. It is grand, heavy, and unapologetically large, and somewhere ahead, you sense a different kind of animals, smaller, cleverer, more adaptable, already learning how to survive among giants, using something sharper than tusks or claws. You notice the change, not through sight, but through pattern. Tracks appear that don't belong to hooves or paws, narrow impressions, evenly spaced, purposeful. Someone else is here, someone lighter than the giants, quieter than the predators, yet somehow more disruptive than either. You slow down instinctively, because this is the moment when humans enter the Ice Age story. Not with thunder, but with caution. One mainstream historical fact settles into your thoughts as you follow the faint trail. Anatomically modern humans spread across much of the world during the last Ice Age, moving out of Africa and into Europe, Asia, Australia, and eventually the Americas. They don't arrive all at once. They trickle in, generation by generation, adjusting routes based on climate, food, and opportunity. Migration here isn't heroic or dramatic. It's careful, hesitant, and deeply practical. You imagine a small group moving through this same landscape. They travel light because excess weight is dangerous. Everything they carry has a purpose. Stone tools hang from belts. Furs are stitched together with sinew. Fire is guarded like a living thing, because without it, survival becomes extremely short-term. These humans don't conquer the Ice Age, they negotiate with it. You step into what might have been a temporary camp. The signs are subtle, a circle of stones blackened by old fire, scattered flakes from tool making, bones cracked open to reach the marrow inside. Nothing permanent. Ice Age humans are mobile, following herds and seasons, reading the land like a quiet conversation. They don't leave monuments, they leave hints. Here, a quirky tidbit to let your mind wander gently. Some Ice Age tools show evidence of being repaired again and again. Stone points are reshaped, edges retouched, broken pieces reused. Nothing is wasted. This isn't just thrift, it's survival strategy. Imagine keeping your phone functional for 20 years, using only rocks and patience. Suddenly, cracked screens feel very dramatic. You picture these early humans watching the megafauna with the same mixture of awe and calculation you felt earlier. A mammoth isn't just impressive, it's food, clothing, tools, shelter, and fuel, all wrapped in fur and muscle. But hunting something that large is dangerous. Cooperation becomes essential. Planning matters. Mistakes are remembered for generations, usually through very pointed storytelling around the fire. Historians still argue whether early humans were primarily big game hunters or flexible generalists who only occasionally targeted massive animals. Some evidence suggests sophisticated hunting strategies focused on large prey, while other findings show heavy reliance on plants, small animals, and scavenging. As you stand in this imagined camp, both possibilities feel true. You adapt based on what the land offers, not on ideology. The Ice Age does not reward purity. You notice how humans position themselves in the landscape. Camps sit near water, but not too close. They favor elevated ground with clear sightlines, early warning systems made of geography. Caves are used sometimes, but not constantly. Shelter is portable tents of hide and bone that can be packed up when herds move on. This is not a world where you settle easily. This is a world where you stay ready. Another mainstream fact drifts in. Ice Age humans coexist with other human species, such as Neanderthals, for thousands of years. They share landscapes, resources, and occasionally genes. This isn't a clean handoff from one species to another. It's messy, overlapping, and deeply human. You re-standing in a world where human docility yet mean just one thing. Light joke number 1 slides in softly. Imagine explaining that family tree at a holiday dinner. So, part of us comes from people who thrived in sub-zero Europe, wearing basically rugs and confidence. You imagine daily life unfolding here. Someone naps stone tools, tapping carefully, reading fracture lines like a language. Someone else prepares, hides, scraping fat away to prevent rot. Children watch everything, absorbing skills long before they understand their importance. Knowledge is passed through demonstration and story, not manuals. Forgetting how to do something isn't inconvenient, it's fatal. Firelight flickers in your mind. It's more than warmth, it's protection from predators, a place to cook food, a social anchor. Around it, humans talk not just about survival, but about experiences, fears, and maybe ideas that don't have words yet. This is where culture quietly begins to thicken, even in the cold. Here's another quirky tidbit. Some researchers suggest Ice Age humans used natural substances, like ochre, not just for art, but possibly as sunscreen, insect repellent, or hide preservative. Yes, even in a frozen world, sunburn and bugs are still problems. Nature remains committed to inconvenience. That's light joke number 2, and it's well earned. You walk away from the camp area, feeling the tension humans live with here. They are not apex predators. They are not the strongest, fastest, or best equipped physically. What they have is flexibility, social bonds, the ability to plan beyond the immediate moment. The Ice Age sharpens these traits like stone on stone. Historians still argue whether climate stress during the Ice Age directly accelerated human innovation, or whether humans would have developed complex tools and social systems regardless of environment. Some see hardship as the catalyst, others see it as just one variable among many. As you imagine these people moving across frozen plains, adapting constantly, it's hard not to feel the cold pushing creativity forward, step by careful step. Light joke number 3 drifts through your thoughts. Necessity is the mother of invention. But in the Ice Age, necessity is also the very strict father who expects results immediately. As you continue walking, the sense settles in that humans don't dominate this world yet, but they belong here. They fit into the Ice Age, like a new piece in an old puzzle, not obvious at first, but increasingly important. Their arrival doesn't end the Age of Giants, but it changes the rules quietly, persistently, in ways that won't be fully understood for thousands of years. You move on, leaving behind the faint traces of human presence, knowing they will follow across ice, across land bridges, across time itself, learning how to survive a planet that offers no comfort and very few second chances. You follow the human trail a little farther, and the signs become clearer, not louder, just more intentional. This is where survival turns from instinct into technique. You can almost feel the quiet confidence in the air, the sense that humans have stopped merely reacting to the Ice Age and started outsmarting it in small, clever ways. One mainstream historical fact eases into your thoughts as naturally as breath in cold air. Fire is the single most important survival tool Ice Age humans possess. It provides warmth, light, protection from predators, and the ability to cook food, unlocking more calories from meat and plants alike. Fire turns frozen nights into something survivable. Without it, the Ice Age would be brutally short for humans. With it, they carve out pockets of comfort in a hostile world. You imagine tending a fire here. It's never casual. Someone is always watching it, feeding it carefully, shielding it from wind. Embers are sometimes carried from place to place, protected in bark or bone containers, because starting a fire from scratch in damp, icy conditions is risky. Fire isn't a convenience. It's a responsibility. Let it die, and everyone feels the consequences. Nearby, you notice furs drying on simple frames. Clothing in the Ice Age isn't fashion, it's engineering. Animal hides are scraped, stretched, smoked, and stitched together with bone needles. Yes, bone needles slender, precise tools that allow tailored clothing rather than simple draped skins. This matters. Fitted garments trap heat better and allow movement without exposure. It's the difference between enduring cold and functioning in it. Here's a quirky tidbit to let your sleepy brain smile. Lice genetics suggest humans start wearing regular lead clothing far earlier than you might expect, possibly over 100,000 years ago. Parasites evolve alongside habits, and lice that live in clothing appear only after clothing becomes common. In other words, tiny bugs accidentally timestamp humanity's fashion choices. That's light joke number 1. Even in the Ice Age, your outfit attracts commentary. You imagine boots stuffed with grass or fur for insulation, mittens tied with sinew so they aren't lost in snow, hoods pulled tight against the wind. Every piece has a purpose. There is no such thing as just-in-case gear. Everything already passed the absolutely necessary test. Modern packing lists would not survive peer review here. Food preparation happens nearby. Meat is roasted, dried, or frozen intentionally for later use. Fat is prized, rendered, and stored because it burns well and fuels bodies efficiently. Bones are cracked for marrow, a rich energy source. Even sinew and cartilage are saved. Nothing goes to waste, not out of moral virtue, but because the Ice Age punishes inefficiency. Historians still argue whether Ice Age humans relied more on big game hunting or on a broad diet that included plants, fish, birds, and small mammals. The evidence suggests remarkable flexibility. When large prey is available, humans take advantage. When it isn't, they pivot without sentimentality. Survival here is not about tradition, it's about responsiveness. You notice tools scattered neatly near the camp. Stone blades, scrapers, points. Some are clearly specialized, designed for skinning, cutting, woodworking. Others are multi-purpose, carried until they're worn down and reshaped. Toolkits are small but adaptable. Skill matters more than quantity. You don't need many tools if you know exactly how to use them. Another mainstream fact drifts in. Ice Age humans develop sophisticated hunting aids like spear throwers, increasing range and power without requiring more muscle. Technology quietly compensates for physical limitations. You need to be the strongest creature on the step if you can think a few steps ahead. Intelligence becomes a survival trait, sharpened by necessity and cold mornings. Light joke number 2 floats by gently. The Ice Age fitness plan involves walking long distances, lifting heavy things, and absolutely zero rest days. Results guaranteed, or you simply don't continue. Shelter comes next. Sometimes it's a cave, but more often it's something built frames of wood, tusk, or bone covered with hides. These structures are positioned to block prevailing winds and catch sunlight when possible. Inside, space is organized carefully. Fire in the center, sleeping areas along the edges, tools within reach. It's minimalism enforced by climate, and it works beautifully. You imagine the sounds inside such a shelter at night. Fire crackling, wind pressing against hides, soft breathing. Outside, predators pass by, curious but cautious. Firelight keeps them at bay. The glow is both comfort and boundary. A small human claim in an otherwise indifferent world. Here's another quirky tidbit. Some evidence suggests ice-aged humans use adhesives made from tree resins and even birch tar to attach stone points to wooden shafts. Creating these substances requires controlled heating without oxygen, surprisingly complex process. This isn't accidental chemistry. It's planned, learned, and taught. In a frozen world, people are quietly becoming scientists. Historians still argue whether such technological leaps happen gradually or in bursts during periods of intense environmental stress. Some see innovation accelerating when conditions worsen. Others argue that knowledge accumulates steadily, regardless of hardship. As you stand here, watching imagined sparks rise into the dark, it feels like pressure and patience working together, cold pushing, time smoothing. Light joke number 3 settles in softly. Necessity may be the mother of invention, but in the Ice Age, invention is also the ant who shows up with extremely practical advice and no patience for excuses. As you move past the camp, you carry a new understanding with you. Humans survive the Ice Age not by overpowering it, but by layering solutions: fire, clothing, tools, cooperation until cold loses its absolute authority. It still bites, it still threatens, but it no longer decides everything. You walk on, wrapped in the quiet realization that survival here is not loud or dramatic. It's careful, thoughtful, repeated daily in 1,000 small actions. And in mastering those actions, humans are slowly learning something dangerous and powerful: how to live almost anywhere. You leave the organized bustle of the small human camp and move into the rhythm of daily life under the Ice Age sky. Here, survival isn't punctuated by drama or headlines. It's measured in tiny, repetitive acts that accumulate into endurance. You trudge across frozen soil, feeling the crunch of frost underfoot, imagining the humans who wake each day to repeat this dance: forage, hunt, repair, and preserve. One mainstream historical fact settles in quietly. Ice Age humans structured their daily routines meticulously around environmental conditions. They rise with the sun, or sometimes before it, to maximize limited daylight in winter. Even tasks that feel mundane to us, gathering fuel, checking traps, mending garments, carry weight because efficiency directly correlates with survival. In this world, procrastination isn't just frowned upon, it can be fatal. You notice the reliance on repetition. Stone tools are sharpened in the morning. Fire is stoked and inspected. Water is collected from nearby streams or melted snow. Food is prepped carefully, portioned, and stored where it won't freeze too hard or spoil unexpectedly. The patterns are steady and unglamorous, yet each step is deliberate. One slip, one forgotten task, can ripple into disaster. It's a life that rewards consistency more than flash. Here, a quirky tidbit to keep your drifting thoughts engaged. Some Ice Age humans may have used rudimentary calendars or seasonal markers to plan hunting and gathering. They tracked animal migrations, plant cycles, and weather patterns, not with numbers or paper, but through observation and memory. Imagine relying entirely on instinct, communal knowledge, and subtle environmental cues instead of your phone's calendar. That's light joke number 1, a very low-tech but high-stakes planner. Predators remain a constant background tension. Tracks in the snow remind humans that even small mistakes can be noticed. Wolves, big cats, and even opportunistic birds are part of the calculus. Humans balance risk with reward, moving carefully, traveling in groups, and using landscape features for concealment. Every day is a negotiation with danger, a lesson in attention and patience. Historians still argue how structured early human schedules really were. Some suggest a nearly rigid routine, shaped by daylight, temperature, and prey behavior. Others envision more flexibility, with humans adapting as circumstances shifted. Walking through this imagined step, both possibilities feel plausible. Daily life is a mixture of rhythm and improvisation, with consequences heavier than you're used to imagining. You watch imagined hands shaping hides for clothing or shelter. Fingers stiff with cold learn subtle techniques for scraping, stretching, and sewing. Even minor mistakes, Matara weak stitch, can expose skin to frostbite. A poorly placed seam might allow wind to sneak in. The human's work is precise, deliberate, and repeated across generations. The Ice Age, you realize, is a demanding teacher. Another mainstream fact filters into your awareness. Ice Age humans create and maintain storage systems for food and resources. Frozen meat is preserved naturally. Caches of nuts or tubers are hidden strategically, and fat is rendered and stored. These simple acts are the difference between lean survival and starvation. Planning, patience, and foresight are their most valuable tools, sometimes more than any spear or knife. You imagine a small child following an adult, watching, absorbing skills silently. Knowledge is transmitted quietly. How to recognize tracks, how to prepare food safely, how to read subtle weather signs. There are no books, no instructors, just observation, practice, and correction. Mistakes are corrected immediately and remembered vividly. Education is constant, embedded into the rhythm of life. Light joke number 2 drifts in softly in the Ice Age. School is outdoors, grading is literal, and detention could involve frostbite. Very motivational. The sky shifts slowly as you move, clouds curling faintly above. Short winters, long summers, brief transitions. Humans adjust daily life to maximize survival during these periods. Hunting, gathering, maintaining tools, caring for fire, processing hides, all interwoven into a rhythm that becomes second nature. They live intimately with time, with the seasons, with the limitations of their world, in a way modern schedules cannot replicate. Another quirky tidbit: some archaeological evidence suggests that humans may have left small, intentional arrangements of stones or stakes near campsites, possibly marking paths, warning of hazards, or signaling resources. In a world without signs or maps, such markers are crucial, primitive GPS, if you will. Light joke number 3. It est the Ice Age version of turn left at the weird rock. You take a slow breath, imagining the humans settling for the night. Fire is tended, wind howls outside, food is secure, tools are ready for the morning. The repetitive, mundane acts that feel invisible in your modern mind are the backbone of life here. Without these routines, everything else, hunting, movement, survival, fails. As you continue walking through the imagined landscape, the quiet satisfaction of routines underlines the entire Ice Age experience. Life here isn't always grand, dramatic, or terrifying. Often, it's small, careful, and persistent, building the resilience necessary to endure vast ice, powerful predators, and freezing nights. It's the slow, deliberate heartbeat of survival. The morning air carries a thin mist curling across the frozen ground, and you notice how silence dominates the landscape. It's not an empty silence, it's full of possibility, carrying faint sounds of distant animals, trickling water, and the subtle creak of ice shifting miles away. You realize that life under Ice Age conditions is defined as much by these quiet moments as by action. Survival often happens between movement and breath, in attentiveness to the small details that many would overlook. One mainstream historical fact settles into your thoughts as you trudge onward. Ice Age humans relied heavily on knowledge of their environment. They tracked animal migrations, seasonal changes, and even subtle shifts in plant growth to make daily survival decisions. Understanding the land and its cycles wasn't optional, it was essential. Knowing when a river would freeze, or when berries ripen under fleeting sunlight, could mean life or death. You crouch beside a frozen stream, listening to the thin ice cracking under its own weight. Water is more than a resource. It's a hazard, a boundary, and a guide. Humans learned to read rivers like highways, noticing which sections held fish in winter, which patches froze too thinly, and which currents could carry small rafts of food or tools downstream. Movement is constrained by nature, and humans adapt with patience, intelligence, and caution. Here's a quirky tidbit to keep your sleepy mind engaged. Some Ice Age people may have used animal intestines as containers for water and other liquids, long before pottery became common. It's practical, grossly efficient, and slightly uncanny, a liquid carried in a living material that once had a very different purpose. That's your first light joke for this section. The original hydration pack, with optional internal seasoning. You watch the shadows stretch across the landscape as a herd of reindeer moves silently, grazing between patches of lichen. Humans observe these herds carefully, taking notes on behavior, numbers, and movement. Tracking animals is as much about memory as observation. They memorize paths, feeding areas, and seasonal patterns. Every encounter provides information that will be used immediately or stored for the next generation. Historians still argue how complex these tracking skills really were. Some scholars suggest they approached a form of proto-scientific observation, with patterns and predictions passed down systematically. Others believe the knowledge was more intuitive, flexible, and oral, taught through stories, gestures, and repeated experience. Standing here in imagination, both possibilities feel alive. The land teaches, but humans must interpret. You continue across the steppe and notice how the vegetation responds to the presence of megafauna and humans alike. Grasses bend, shrubs scatter seeds, and soil compacts under hoof and foot. Even frozen ground carries echoes of past movement. Life and movement are entangled. Humans learn to anticipate how the environment changes from day to day, season to season, using subtle cues from sound, smell, and sight. Another mainstream fact drifts in. Ice-aged humans often hunted collaboratively, setting traps, driving animals into ambush zones, and sharing knowledge across groups. Hunting large animals like mammoths requires social cooperation, communication, and careful planning. This isn't solo heroism, it's quiet coordination, repeated until instinct and memory carry it forward automatically. A second quirky tidbit emerges. Some evidence suggests that humans occasionally used natural pigments, like ochre, in preparation for hunting or ritual, perhaps to mark tools, signal group members, or as symbolic expression. Historians still debate the exact purpose. Regardless, color appears in the cold landscape, a subtle hint of culture amid survival, like graffiti left by long-dead ghosts. Light joke number 2 drifts gently. The first camouflage might have been literally rubbing mud or ochre on your face and hoping the mammoth doesn't notice your awkward shin wiggle. Subtlety matters, apparently. You move along a ridge, scanning for predators. Tracks indicate wolves nearby. They are patient, opportunistic, but not reckless. Humans recognize danger without panicking. Understanding the behavior of both prey and predator is a daily lesson honed over years of observation. This attentiveness is survival encoded into the nervous system. Another mainstream fact settles. Humans adapt their movement to environmental extremes. In summer, travel is easier. In winter, snowshoes, sleds, or careful route selection reduce risk. Clothing, fire, and tool use are all extensions of mobility. The Ice Age challenges humans, not just physically, but cognitively, requiring constant anticipation, improvisation, and attention to subtle environmental signals. You imagine the day fading, the sun low, shadows stretching across frozen plains. Humans prepare for night. Fires are fed, hides are arranged, and tasks are double-checked. Even in this harsh environment, small comforts matter. Firelight and warmth provide psychological stability as much as physical protection. Rituals, storytelling, and shared knowledge maintain cohesion within groups, ensuring that the daily repetition of survival remains effective. Light joke number 3. In the Ice Age, bedtime routines include counting mammoth tracks instead of sheep and double-checking your fire pit like a paranoid landlord. It works surprisingly well. As you trudge on toward the settling dusk, you sense the quiet resilience of these humans. Their intelligence, adaptability, and careful observation are invisible strengths, not flashy heroics. In a world ruled by ice, wind, and giants, the Ice Age human is quietly, persistently remarkable. And you, walking through this imagined world, feel the rhythm of survival, pressing softly, insistently, into your awareness. The evening settles in slowly, dragging a cold blue across the landscape, and you notice how shadows stretch like long fingers over the frozen ground. The steppe quiets, but not completely. The low, distant sounds of animals still ripple through the air. Subtle reminders that life never truly stops, even in the deepest cold. You trudge along, feeling the rhythm of the Ice Age settle into your bones. The environment itself, a constant, patient presence. One mainstream historical fact drifts into your mind. Ice Age humans frequently used caves for shelter, particularly in regions where exposed land offered little protection from wind and snow. Caves provide insulation, consistent temperatures, and a degree of safety from predators. But occupying a cave is not a casual matter. Humans carefully select entrances, proximity to resources, and even ventilation. Each choice carries practical consequences. Inside one imagined cave, smoke curls from a small, controlled fire. Its warmth reaches the walls, revealing faint etchings and ochre stains left by earlier occupants. Some marks may be decorative, symbolic, or ritualistic. Historians still argue exactly what these early forms of expression meant. Perhaps they were early storytelling, or perhaps simply an experiment with pigment and surface. Either way, it's a glimpse of consciousness reaching out beyond pure survival. Here, a quirky tidbit for your semi-sleepy mind. Cave floors sometimes show repeated footprints from generations of inhabitants, almost like a diary pressed into soft sediment. These prints preserve intimate moments, someone walking carefully, a child playing, animals moving through. Its history frozen in time, accidentally intimate and strangely touching. That's light joke number 1 for this section. Archaeology as accidental scrapbook. You watch imagined humans at work in the cave. One scrapes a hide, another sharpens a tool, and a third tends the fire with methodical precision. Even in freezing temperatures, every movement has purpose. Fatigue is managed, because exhaustion can kill quickly. Life here is both focused and delicate. A single misstep, mishandled tool, unattended fire, misread predator sign could have serious consequences. Efficiency is survival, repeated endlessly. Historians still argue about the degree of social complexity in Ice Age cave groups. Were these small bands purely cooperative for survival, or did they have social hierarchies, traditions, and proto-rituals embedded in daily routines? Evidence suggests both could be true, depending on location and environmental pressures. Standing here, you sense that cooperation and subtle social negotiation are crucial, though not flashy. You imagine food storage within the cave. Meat is hung near the ceiling or in cold crevices to slow spoilage. Fat is rendered and carefully tucked away. Roots and berries are stored, sometimes mixed with charcoal or sand, to keep pests at bay. Everything is intentional. No food is wasted. The Ice Age enforces discipline, whether you want it or not. Another mainstream fact: humans innovate under these pressures. Sleds, snowshoes, and tools adapted for cold demonstrate ingenuity, responding to necessity. Some items are built for repeated use, others carefully discarded when worn. Humans must constantly assess cost versus benefit, and mistakes are lessons learned the hard way. You hear the faint sound of wind brushing against the cave's exterior. It's both warning and lullaby, a reminder that outside this temporary sanctuary, the Ice Age continues to assert itself. You feel small, attentive, and simultaneously part of the rhythm. Survival here is never passive. Light joke number 2. In the Ice Age, bedtime involves checking your fire twice, counting animal tracks, and wondering if that odd crack in the ceiling is a tiny rock fall or the universe giving unsolicited advice. Efficiency doubles as entertainment. You notice the tools scattered about. Some are simple flakes for cutting. Others are composite, shafts, points, bindings. Every item carries history. Repairs are evident, edges reshaped. Humans maximize the life of each tool. Nothing is discarded lightly. The concept of planned obsolescence is literally lethal ignorance here. A quirky tidbit: some evidence suggests humans used heated stones in caves to regulate warmth and cook food simultaneously. They arranged them near fires, or even submerged them in shallow water to release heat gradually. This is engineering without equations, proof that necessity breeds clever improvisation. Your brain registers it quietly, a gentle acknowledgement of ingenuity. Historians still argue whether these cave settlements were seasonal hubs, permanently occupied, or somewhere in between. Some argue mobility dominated, others that certain caves became cultural centers. Observing this imagined space, both theories feel reasonable. Humans are adaptable, moving fluidly between permanence and mobility as survival demands. Light joke number 3 drifts in softly. This is the Ice Age version of Airbnb, but with 0 stars, full judgment from predators, and a strict no forgetting fire policy. As you leave the imagined cave, dusk deepening, you carry the awareness that humans are not merely reacting to their environment, they are subtly shaping it, layering ingenuity atop instinct. Fires glow, tools gleam faintly in memory, paths are known. Survival is orchestrated carefully, repeatedly, and always with one eye on what's coming next. You step out of the cave into a sky stretched thin with cold light, and the world feels vast and unending. Frost sparkles across tufts of grass and frozen streams, tiny mirrors reflecting a pale sun. You trudge through the quiet, noticing how every detail matters: the snap of ice underfoot, the soft rumble of distant predators, the subtle scent of vegetation frozen in mid-cycle. Life here is about observation as much as movement. One mainstream historical fact settles gently in your mind. Ice Age humans are exceptional trackers. They follow footprints, broken branches, and subtle changes in terrain to locate prey, water, or shelter. Tracking isn't guessing. It's pattern recognition refined over lifetimes. Each step is guided by memory, instinct, and acute attention. A misread sign might waste hours, or, worse, so caution is embedded into every movement. You crouch beside a small depression in the snow, noticing it might be the remnants of a trap used to catch smaller animals. Humans employ ingenuity here, using pits, snares, and simple levers to capture food without excessive risk. It's clever, low-energy hunting that complements the larger strategies you've already seen. Survival isn't just brute force, it's applied thought. Here, a quirky tidbit for your half-dreaming brain. Some ice-aged humans appear to have intentionally painted their spears with bright pigments. Was it ritual, identification, or just subtle intimidation of prey? Historians still debate the reason. Light joke number 1, ancient spear, fashion. Because why not accessorize before risking your life? The wind shifts, carrying distant sounds of movement, hoofed animals grazing, predators circling unseen, birds riding cold currents. Humans must constantly interpret these signals, building mental maps of risk and opportunity. Even a small miscalculation, choosing the wrong path, underestimating a predator, or misreading animal behavior can have immediate consequences. Observation becomes a form of meditation, a careful exercise in presence. Another mainstream fact comes into focus. Ice Age humans demonstrate increasing sophistication in toolmaking. Not just simple stone flakes, but composite tools, stone points attached to wooden shafts, bone needles for precise sewing, and even rudimentary adhesives derived from tree resin. Each tool is adapted to a specific challenge, showing ingenuity under environmental pressure. Life here is a constant engineering problem, solved incrementally, day by day. You notice a small group pausing in a windbreak, sharing food, checking tools, whispering instructions. Social cohesion is vital. Survival is a collective effort. Cooperation, division of labor, and knowledge transfer are central to enduring the harsh environment. Without these bonds, individuals fail. With them, humans persist. The Ice Age emphasizes the value of community as much as personal skill. Historians still argue how much culture Ice Age humans actually had beyond basic survival. Some evidence points toward ritual behavior, symbolic decoration, and early art forms. Other findings suggest daily life was consumed by subsistence to allow extensive cultural expression. Standing in this imagined landscape, you sense both truth and tension. Survival dominates, Yet human creativity quietly flickers in hidden corners. You trudge past frozen streams and low ridges, seeing the indirect effects of megafauna. Grazing patterns alter plant distribution. Trampled snow reveals hidden terrain features. Predators influence herd movement. Even humans adapt routes based on these subtle ecological cues. Every element of life is interwoven. Nothing exists in isolation. Observing this reminds you that survival is negotiation with multiple forces, each alive, each consequential. A quirky tidbit floats in again. Some researchers suggest humans may have used moss or lichen as insulation in shelters or clothing. Not glamorous, not permanent, but remarkably effective. Nature provides if humans are attentive. That's light joke number 2. Ice Age fashion, now with eco-friendly materials. Fire continues to be the lifeline. You imagine evenings spent carefully stoking embers, cooking food, drying hides, and sharing stories. Light joke number 3. In the Ice Age, bedtime includes checking embers like they're tiny, judgmental supervisors. Efficiency and warmth merge into a ritual rhythm. Humans monitor the horizon constantly, not only for prey or predators, but also for weather. Storms can arrive suddenly. Ice shifts, snow drifts, and temperature plunges are dangers. Preparation is continuous. Adaptation is second nature. Life is a series of micro-decisions, repeated until mastery emerges. Another mainstream fact drifts into your thoughts. Humans begin developing symbolic thought at this stage. Not elaborate, but evident in repeated patterns, pigment use, and intentional modification of natural objects. These small gestures signal awareness beyond survival, early glimpses of culture, identity, and shared meaning. Even in cold, dangerous landscapes, imagination persists. You pause, noticing the faint tracks of earlier travelers intersecting your path. Humans, predators, and prey alike, leaving ephemeral signatures on the frozen ground. The landscape is a palimpsest of life, movement, and survival strategies. Each step you take in your imagination carries you across the interwoven tapestry of life in the Ice Age. Fragile, persistent, and endlessly adaptive. The horizon softens with the pale light of late afternoon, and the cold begins to press against you in a different way, sharp, more persistent. You notice how shadows grow longer across the frost-laced steppe, stretching toward low hills and frozen rivers. Every movement carries weight here, and every pause invites reflection. You walk slowly, tracing the patterns left behind by the ceaseless interaction of humans, animals, and the landscape itself. One mainstream historical fact settles into your mind. Ice Age humans are adaptive in group size and social structure. Bands rarely exceed a few dozen individuals because smaller groups are easier to move, feed, and protect. Mobility is paramount, and overextended groups risk both starvation and internal conflict. Humans, you realize, balance community and practicality in an elegant, silent way. You imagine a small band navigating through shallow snowdrifts, guiding children over frozen streams, alert to distant predators, yet conserving energy whenever possible. Hunting parties are carefully planned. Scouts move ahead to avoid danger, and tools are distributed according to skill and need. Every individual has a role, and efficiency is woven into the social fabric. No one is superfluous. Here as a quirky tidbit for your drifting brain. Some evidence suggests that humans may have intentionally transported small animals, like dogs or foxes, not as pets in the modern sense, but as early hunting companions or scouts. Domestication may have begun not in villages, but in these frozen expanses. Light joke number 1. The Ice Age equivalent of bring your pet to work day, but slightly more life or death. Predators are never far from attention. Tracks in the snow, distant cries, the glint of eyes at nightfall, reminders that even the cleverest human must remain vigilant. Saber-toothed cats, wolves, and cave bears each shape human movement, hunting choices, and camp placement. Risk is embedded in the environment, and humans respond with planning, observation, and adaptation. Historians still argue about the frequency and intensity of human megafauna interactions. Some evidence suggests direct hunting was common, while other studies point to opportunistic scavenging and avoidance. Both interpretations highlight human adaptability, but the debate continues. As you imagine this band moving, both strategies feel plausible, sometimes in combination. You notice how Ice Age humans create temporary landmarks, stone piles, sharpened stakes, or painted markers on rocks. These aren't just survival tools, they are communication systems, passing information across time and space without spoken words. Messages like danger nearby, water source, or safe path are subtly encoded into the landscape. This quiet ingenuity is remarkable, considering the limited technology available. Another mainstream fact: humans are beginning to practice ritual behaviors around the Ice Age environment. Evidence of burial, pigment use, and symbolic marking suggests early spiritual or cultural engagement. Life isn't only about survival, it's punctuated by meaning, memory, and perhaps the desire to leave traces beyond immediate utility. The cold, you realize, cannot extinguish curiosity. A quirky tidbit drifts in softly. Footprints of children preserved in mud or snow suggest play and experimentation were part of daily life. Early humans engaged in harmless mischief learning, testing, and practicing essential skills through play. That's light joke number 2. Even in a world of ice and predators, someone has to practice running like a mammoth is chasing you for fun. You observe tool maintenance along the way. Edges are resharpened, shafts reinforced, and broken components repurposed. Even minor oversights can compromise safety. Ice Age humans practice a form of continuous quality control that keeps the band functioning in extreme conditions. Skills, knowledge, and attention to detail are passed down methodically, almost ritualistically, from elder to youth. Historians still argue how knowledge transmission occurred most efficiently in small bands. Oral instruction, demonstration, and imitation all play roles, but evidence of consistent methodologies is hard to trace. Imagining the process, you sense that repetition, storytelling, and subtle correction are central to survival education. You pause, sensing the first tentative hints of twilight. Firelight becomes more important now, not just for warmth, but for social cohesion. Around a small flame, stories are shared, tasks are coordinated, and the communal rhythm of life persists. Fire is a mirror of society, small, flickering, yet essential. Light joke number 3 drifts through your thoughts. Bedtime storytelling includes dawn, tea, forget the fire, or the mammoth eats you, tales practical and slightly terrifying. Survival doubles as entertainment. Efficiency doubles as culture, and observation doubles as meditation. As night begins to stretch across the frozen plains, you understand the fragile mastery humans hold over their environment. The Ice Age is vast, indifferent, and often lethal. Yet these small bands, through cooperation, ingenuity, and meticulous attention, carve out pockets of warmth, sustenance, and even joy. Every footstep, every fire, every shared story builds a rhythm that keeps them alive. And you, wandering through this imagined world, feel the quiet persistence of human adaptability pressing gently against your awareness. Night deepens across the frozen expanse, and the stars are sharp, countless points of light that glint on the ice as though the heavens themselves are watching. The wind shifts and whistles across the ridges, reminding you that the Ice Age is still very much in charge. Yet humans, small and determined, persist. Every cautious step, every flicker of fire, is proof that intelligence and attention can carve out space even in a world this vast and indifferent. One mainstream historical fact drifts gently into your awareness. Ice Age humans actively modify their environment to improve survival chances. They don't just react, they plan. Snow is cleared from paths, small windbreaks are constructed, and fires are carefully managed to optimize warmth and reduce smoke hazards. Even simple choices, like arranging stones around a hearth, reflect a growing sophistication in managing risk and comfort. You imagine a family group tending a fire in a shallow pit, each member with defined roles. One stokes embers, another sharpens tools, a third keeps watch. There is no heroism in this sit's pure functionality. Yet, in this small act of cooperation, the complex social structure of humanity becomes clear. Shared tasks create trust, rhythm, and subtle hierarchies that allow humans to thrive, despite environmental pressures. Here, a quirky tidbit to keep your drifting mind engaged. Some ice-aged humans may have used animal fat not only for food, but also to waterproof clothing, fuel lamps, or even mark territory. You could call it the ultimate multi-toolable, practical, and slightly aromatic. Light joke number 1. Smells like survival, and also slightly like a mammoth. Predators remain a silent presence, stalking the edges of human activity. Wolves, bears, and big cats are never far away. Humans plan accordingly, sleeping near fires, using lookout posts, and maintaining weapons ready for rapid response. Attention to detail becomes instinctual. It's subtle, continuous, and necessary. Every movement, every sound matters. Life here is a negotiation with danger. Historians still argue about the extent to which humans intentionally shaped landscapes for long-term advantage. Did they systematically herd animals, manage vegetation, or build temporary enclosures? Or were most environmental changes incidental? Evidence hints at both. And as you imagine these small bands, it's clear humans influence the world gradually, invisibly, yet profoundly. You notice signs of emerging culture. Ochre pigments, carved bones, and patterned stone tools are scattered carefully, hinting at both creativity and practical communication. These are not luxuries, they are extensions of thought, markers of identity, and perhaps even tools for social cohesion. Even in survival mode, humans find ways to express themselves. Another mainstream fact: Ice Age humans maintain mobility without sacrificing resource accumulation. Caches of food are stored in shallow pits, insulated by snow or natural materials. Tools are repaired and carried. The balance between mobility and permanence is delicate, requiring knowledge, skill, and foresight. Flexibility is a survival trait, honed to near perfection. A quirky tidbit drifts in. Some evidence suggests that humans may have marked trails or territorial boundaries using naturally arranged stones or pigment dots. These subtle signals communicate danger, resource location, or passage to others. Light joke number 2. Primitive GPS, powered by snow and stubbornness. You imagine the evening stretching further, firelight flickering across faces, weary from travel and cold. Tasks continue, small and deliberate, sharpening, repairing, preparing for night. Learning occurs constantly, whether through imitation, correction, or observation. Knowledge is embedded in action and memory alike. Light joke number 3 slides in. Bedtime conversation might include, "Don't forget to feed the fire," or "The mammoth outside will file a complaint." Humor blends with survival, easing tension while keeping everyone alert. Historians still argue whether such symbolic or ritual behaviors served strictly practical purposes, like reinforcing social cohesion, or whether they represent the earliest forms of abstract thought. Perhaps both are true, intertwined inseparably, as they often are in human culture. Observing these imagined actions, the boundary between survival and culture seems thin, dynamic, and creative. As you trudge across the frozen landscape, watching the interplay of firelight, human motion, and silent predators, you sense the rhythm of Ice Age life, careful, deliberate, adaptive, and quietly inventive. Every act of preparation, every shared moment, every subtle innovation accumulates, ensuring survival not just of the individual, but of knowledge, skill, and human presence in a world that is otherwise indifferent. The night deepens fully now, and the cold feels like a soft, persistent weight pressing across the land. The moon glints on frost, casting a pale silver glow over frozen rivers and sparse vegetation. Silence dominates, broken only by the faint creak of shifting ice and distant animal calls. You move carefully, aware of how every footstep matters, not just for your own imagined survival, but as a reminder of the delicate balance humans maintained against the vast, indifferent forces of the Ice Age. One mainstream historical fact settles gently. Ice Age humans are astonishingly resilient, not merely because of strength or speed, but because of knowledge passed across generations. Each child learns to track, hunt, prepare, and survive, building on the wisdom of elders. This transmission of survival knowledge, often without formal teaching, is critical to enduring the harsh conditions of glacial Europe, Siberia, or North America. Each generation carries lessons forward like a torch in the dark. You imagine the small bands consolidating in sheltered spots, fires glowing faintly, furs wrapped tightly, and tools meticulously arranged. Even simple routines, checking fire, tending hides, organizing food stores, reflect foresight and adaptability. Ice Age humans orchestrate survival like a silent symphony, where every gesture matters, every tool has its role, and every action contributes to continuity. Here, as a quirky tidbit for your drifting mind, some researchers suggest humans used bird bones or teeth as jewelry or markers long before settled societies emerged. These small decorations hint at the beginnings of aesthetic expression or social signaling, practical survival intertwined with early cultural curiosity. Light joke number 1. Who knew your necklace could also indicate hunting prowess? Predators remain present, even in imagination. Wolves circle distant ridges. Cave bears roam faintly in memory. Humans plan routes, select sleeping spots, and maintain vigilance. Every interaction with the environment, whether animal or weather, carries consequences. Attention and anticipation become instinctive, second nature. Survival is constant, deliberate, and patient. Historians still argue how widespread such cultural or symbolic behaviors were. Some evidence points to occasional artistic expression, ritual, or social signaling, while other evidence suggests survival dominated every waking moment. Both scenarios highlight human adaptability. Culture emerges even in extreme adversity, often quietly, sometimes unexpectedly. You notice tools and shelters once again. Stone points, composite weapons, sewn hides, and snow-insulated structures all demonstrate ingenuity and practical knowledge. Each item, each technique, represents countless small experiments, trial, error, and repeated refinement over years. Humans innovate continually, shaping their environment subtly yet decisively. Another mainstream fact: mobility is central. Humans travel in small, flexible bands, adjusting their routes seasonally, tracking prey migrations, and avoiding natural hazards. Temporary shelters, caches, and trail markers create a network of survival strategies across the frozen landscape. Even in vast, sparsely populated territories, people move with confidence and foresight, mapping the land in their minds. A quirky tidbit floats in again. Lice genetics suggest humans had been wearing clothing regularly for tens of thousands of years. Tiny insects unintentionally provide evidence of practical innovation and habit. Light joke number 2. Ice Age fashion critics. Absolutely, but they were microscopic. Light joke number 3. Evenings may involve storytelling by firelight. Practical jokes about who forgot the firewood, or playful mimicry of predators. Humor survives, even when the world doesn't soften its edges. Historians still argue whether such small communities maintained long-distance connections or remained entirely localized. Evidence of shared tool styles, pigments, or symbolic items hints at occasional communication across distances. In either case, adaptability, collaboration, and memory underpin survival, culture, and knowledge. As you imagine the final moments of this day, humans huddle near the fire, warmth radiating outward, sharing food, tending tools, and whispering instructions. Outside, the cold continues relentlessly, but inside, persistence, knowledge, and cooperation dominate. Each small action accumulates into survival, each decision reinforcing the resilience that defines humans in the Ice Age. The night stretches endlessly across the frozen plains, and you feel the world soften around you. Frosted ridges fade into a gentle gray, and distant animal calls become whispers rather than warnings. The cold still presses softly, but the sharp edges of danger seem muted now, as if the landscape itself exhales alongside you. You notice the rhythm of life, hear the careful steps, the tending of fire, the quiet work of survival, and it begins to lull your mind into a steady, gentle cadence. You imagine the humans settling into their makeshift shelters, furs layered carefully, embers glowing softly, tools and hides arranged with deliberate care. Each small movement, each repeated action has created safety and warmth. You sense how attentiveness, patience, and shared knowledge are woven seamlessly into every gesture. It's not drama or heroics that carry them through the Ice Age, but the quiet persistence of doing what must be done again and again with precision and care. Even the harshest predators now feel distant, almost like echoes in a story told beside a fire. Wolves and saber-toothed cats have their roles, yet human ingenuity and cooperation have created spaces of relative safety. The world, you realize, is a balance of vast forces, and humans move within it with gentle, persistent mastery. Even the smallest signs of culture pigments on tools, footprints of children, patterns in snow assure you that curiosity, creativity, and memory endure. As you breathe slowly, the landscape fades into soft shadows and gentle white light, leaving only impressions of resilience and rhythm. The Ice Age is vast and indifferent, yet life presses forward quietly, persistently. You feel the weight of survival ease into something softer, almost meditative, as the memory of careful footsteps, glowing embers, and whispered instructions drifts through your mind. Now, let yourself exhale. Let your thoughts settle like snowflakes drifting to the ground. The cold, the wind, the giants, the predators, they are all at peace here for now. And you, too, are held in the gentle hush of history, suspended between past and present, warmth and frost, movement and stillness. Drift slowly, softly, and know that for tonight you are safe, enveloped by the quiet endurance of the Ice Age.